We got no business being in the playoffs until we earn our way to get in the playoffs.
This thing right here was built for this. You go take what belongs to you.
The game stands alone. It's got such history and tradition, but there's so much at stake for both teams.
What's it coming down the track? Pressure, a flex by the red and black.
Throws into the end zone. It's caught. Touchdown. This team just refuses to die.
This is why you play in the SEC, and this is where legends are made.
Yeah, these two SEC Titans will collide tomorrow in Atlanta. Number 1 Georgia facing number 8 Alabama in the SEC championship game. Georgia is favored, but Bama might have a shot at the upset with QB Jalen Milroe playing the best ball of his career. Here's Bill Connolly on the improved play from the Tide QB.
4th and goal from the 31-yard line. Milroe stands in.
Firing, near corner. It's caught. Touchdown, Alabama. 4th and a mile.
Jalen Milroe capped a dramatic comeback in the Iron Bowl with a miracle touchdown that saved Alabama's CFP hopes. While it may feel like a distant memory now, Nick Saban never seemed comfortable with handing the reins of the Alabama offense to Milroe. Even though Milroe won games and flashed major rushing potential while filling in for Bryce Young last season, Saban brought in Notre Dame's Tyler Buchner after spring practice and benched Milroe after a single poor performance against Texas in Week 2.
Intercepted coming down the field. Disastrous play for Milroe, his second pick tonight.
After his other QBs fared even worse, however, Saban officially gave the job to Milroe. 2 months later, he has Bama back to within 1 win of another SEC title and a potential college football playoff bid. Milroe's progress picked up steam in November. In his first 3 starts, he produced a total QBR of 74.2. That improved to 78.3 over his next 4 starts, then exploded to 93.3 in his last 4. He completed 69% of his passes in November, and in a season-defining win over LSU, he outdueled potential Heisman winner Jaden Daniels.
See ya! Touchdown, Alabama!
Milroe's sack and interception rates are going down, his completion rate is going up, and when the moment requires, he remains one of the most dangerous rushing quarterbacks in the country.
He's a 4-4 sprinter, and you saw it.
That might be the key to upsetting Georgia in the SEC championship. Georgia's pass defense is as strong as ever, but the Bulldogs rank just 62nd in rushing success rate allowed and have given up at least 10 yards on 13% of carries. Milroe's legs, plus his improving arm, could create an upset opportunity in Atlanta.
Now tomorrow will be just the 4th time since 2010 that Nick Saban and Alabama are an underdog. All 4 of those games will have been against Georgia. The first time Bama has been a dog since the 2021 playoff semifinal, snapping the 2nd longest streak in the FBS behind only the Georgia Bulldogs. Surprise, surprise. All right, Joe Fortenbaugh, what do you like? What do you think about this SEC championship game?
Over. Total continues to go up. Just went up about another half point in the last hour, sitting around 55.5. Why? 2 teams that are perceived to have elite defenses. And yes, these defenses are very good, but they are not elite. Let's start with Georgia. Number 1 against the run last year at around 80 rushing yards per game. This year they've fallen to 25th. They're giving up more than 30 additional yards per game this season. That is very good news for Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, who makes his money on the ground. Now, on the other side of the equation, Bama's defense has been good, but against good offenses, they've given up big numbers. Texas hung 34 on them. LSU hung 28, and Jaden Daniels got hurt at the end of that game, and Tennessee hung 20 on him in the first half. I think this is finally going to be an offense in Bama that pushes Georgia, and we're going to go over the total in this one.
All right.
Championship weekend has arrived. Time to get hot. Stanford Steve in Atlanta, Georgia, getting set for the SEC Championship. I'm here in Las Vegas, site of tonight's Pac-12 Championship game. So, Steve, we'll begin with the Oregon Ducks, laying 9.5 against Washington. Total in the neighborhood of about 65.5. Do you like the Ducks laying the big number here?
I'm not sure, Joe. When I think about this matchup, think about it. You know, I was there in Seattle for the Oregon-Washington game. Right around the 36-33. That number was high, right around the same number. But when I look at Washington, I'm just wary of the idea of what they look like the last 2 weeks. Penix has not looked great. 18-33 last week. The week before, playing in the pouring rain in Corvallis. And I just wonder if he's 100%. They say he is. I don't like the looks of what I watched last week, as you see it there, walking off the field after winning the Apple Cup. So I do believe Washington has the goods to go at this Oregon defense. You want to attack that secondary. The front line is the strength. Washington has NFL receivers. I expect Washington to keep it close. I do think Oregon wins the game.
Washington first 6 games, 44 points per game. Washington last 6 games, 31 points per game. Keep an eye on the under in this one. There's been some money flowing in that direction. To the SEC championship game tomorrow, which is where you're located. Georgia laying 5, total of 55.5 against Alabama. Interesting split here. On one side, when it opened Georgia -4, you had pro money on the Bulldogs. When it got as high as Bama +6, you had pro money on the Crimson Tide. Which side are you agreeing with?
I'm looking at the underdog, Joe. 4th time since 2010, Nick Saban and the Tide have been underdog. Every time that's been against Georgia. I just like what Alabama brings to the table defensively. Carson Beck, not a runner. Mobile quarterbacks have given Alabama trouble. Dallas Turner, Braswell off the edge. I think they can make things uncomfortable for Carson Beck. And you talk about the evolution of that Alabama offense. We saw Milroe make a catastrophe of disaster decisions and then ultimately make the unbelievable play of 4th and 31. I expect the quarterback run game to be huge for Alabama. I think they keep it close. I'll take Bama plus the points.
I think we're going to see some scoring in this one as well.
Okay.
Both defenses very, very good, but not as strong as we've seen in the past. The over would be the play for me. ACC championship game, Florida State versus Louisville. Louisville off a tough loss last week against Kentucky. Big bounce back spot here. Florida State, very interesting. They were a 3-point favorite yesterday, and that number started coming down to as low as 1.5 with the injury and status of quarterback Tate Rodemaker. Are you willing to back the Noles here?
Yeah, I think so. It's because of their defense, Joe. I also look at the under in this game, knowing what Florida State brings to the table. But also on the other side, Plummer, Jeff Brown's going to have his whole bag of tricks working, knowing that they could pull the upset still because of the brand of Florida State and what Louisville has become. But Verse, Johnson, those guys on the Florida State defense, it's a matter of whether or not they create short fields for that offense. But the outlying factor is Rodemaker's a game-time decision. We don't know. And I can't imagine what that locker room has been like, not knowing, or maybe they do know who their quarterback is, but knowing what's at stake in this cloud surrounding them that people have created, saying they may not be worthy of it because they don't have their starting quarterback. I expect a motivated team. I would side with Florida State, but I'm also starting to think about that under.
So much intrigue in that matchup for what's at stake for Florida State. Even if they win, do they still get in? But forget about that. Forget about everything else. It's time to talk about the biggest game on our radar. Michigan laying around 22 against Iowa. The focal point here is the total of 34.5. Do we dare bet an over in an Iowa game?
I am. I did. I will again. I'm taking the over. I know it goes against everything to do with Iowa football. But when you talk about Iowa and what they bring to the table, they can't be themselves when they play Michigan. They're able to be themselves when they play Indiana and Wisconsin and Minnesota, but they have to come out and try things they're not normally doing because they're going to have to score. I honestly think Michigan could get to the over themselves. With Harbaugh back on the sidelines, plenty of emotion will be on Michigan's sideline. Possible 1 seed on the line in the whole playoff. I expect a lot of points. I should say a lot of points because the number's as low as it is. But I like the over in this game.
Iowa's team total is a robust 6.5. I'm going to play the over just for the sweat.
All week.
Hasn't budged at all. The best number a bookmaker has ever hung. Iowa team total 6.5. All right, let's get official here. Stakeout challenge. You and I have been going back and forth all season long. Loser buys the winner a steak. I got you back from last year, so you're going to owe me the steak, but it's the type of situation where you're winning too. So we said Harlow in Vegas before the season started. Is that going to be it? Seafood Tower?
Absolutely. That's to start things, Joe.
All right, just to start things, Seafood Tower, Harlow. Floor is yours. All three of your picks this weekend. Where do you want to go?
I'm going to take Alabama plus the points. I do, like I said earlier, I think that defense makes Carson Beck uncomfortable enough, and Alabama keeps it close enough. I like the over. That's my favorite play of the weekend with the Michigan-Iowa game. Michigan's offense is nothing that Iowa has seen in weeks prior, and I believe Michigan with that motivation. Plenty at stake. These people talking about they just want to get out of there, and if they ran the ball for a whole second half against Penn State, they'll do the same thing against Iowa. I think that messes up J.J. McCarthy. I think it caused some things to happen to him in that Maryland game. All systems to go for Michigan, and I think they take care of Iowa.
I'm sorry. That is just way too much action for the Michigan-Iowa game. Way too much action for the Michigan-Iowa game. I'll give you three myself. Let's go to the Big 12 championship. Texas team total over 34.5 points. This is the first game out on Saturday, all right? Georgia and Alabama play later. Florida State plays later. Michigan and Iowa play later. Hang a big number. Run up the score. Try to impress the committee. I think that's what Steve Sarkisian is going to be thinking.